Hello Bangtan News. Today that I end this video, we will not talk about gossip, that we will not guess, that we'll just observe, slow down, that as honest as possible, because there is something that feels very real inside. Are you sure? Not because the scene is fancy, not because the place is beautiful, but because the relationships that arise in it feel alive. Since the first episode, we can feel that this show is not just about travel. It's not just about activity. It is about two people who are in the same space, and feel safe with each other. Jimin and Jungkook don't look like they're role-playing, they look like they are being themselves, calm down, relax, and not in a hurry. There's something very interesting about the way Jungkook moves around with Jimin. His body didn't seem to be on guard, not stiff. No restraint, the movement just flows. His hands are often looking for Jimin, sometimes touching his arm, sometimes lingering on his shoulder. Sometimes just stay close to him, without a word, without any contrived intent. That it's not a dramatic touch, this is not a scene deliberately made to look sweet, these are small touches that appear when a person feels safe. Another thing that always repeats itself is distance. Or rather, a distance that almost never exists. And no matter how big the room, it doesn't matter how big the sofa is, Jungkook always chose to sit right next to Jimin, close. Share space. As if that was the most comfortable place for him, and this is important, because an uncomfortable person will create distance. People who feel forced will take care of their personal space, but Jungkook did just the opposite. Before this show aired, there were many assumptions. Some say Jungkook doesn't want to be there, some say he was forced to, some believe he only came because of duty, but it all came crashing down from the first episode. Because Jungkook himself proposed this event. He didn't just agree, that he designed it. He even proposed the idea of starting shooting abruptly. So that the recorded reaction feels more honest, more spontaneous, more real. As he told the idea, there was no depressed look on his face, there was no forced tone in his voice, all there was a relaxed smile and enthusiasm. This is not the expression of a person who is in a place where he does not want to go. It is the expression of a person who is comfortable with what he is doing. As the episode progresses, we don't see Jungkook moving away, we don't see him getting cold, quite the opposite. He looks more relaxed, it's getting quieter, getting closer to Jim. But as that comfort becomes more apparent, some people begin to feel uncomfortable. They began to cut scenes, take sentences out of context, looking for meaning that really does not exist. One example is when Jungkook jokes and says everything is business matters. If we watch the scene in its entirety, the atmosphere is very light, there was laughter. It's a joke. And no tension. But some people choose to ignore all that. They consider the sentence a serious limitation, though. At the same time, Jungkook did not let go of Jimin's hand. He even squeezed it with a smile. Jimin laughed and tried to pull his hand away, and Jungkook still didn't let go. If it is an earnest limitation, the first thing that will disappear is touch, but here, the touch precisely remains, and it speaks more truthfully than words. Over time, we see one consistent pattern, not just one scene, not just one moment. That comfort comes up again and again. In laughter. In silence. In a small gaze that is often missed, and this is important, because forged happiness cannot last long. It will crack. It will feel forced. It will appear only at a certain moment. But Jungkook's happiness with Jimin was constant. He is present even when there is no dialogue. It is present even when the camera is not looking for a big moment. It was a quiet happiness and no noise. Not trying to convince anyone. It's just there. Another moment that reinforces all this is when they talk about the future of Are You Sure? They clearly said that this event was not over, that they will return, that they will travel together again. There was no doubt in their voices. No awkwardness, there is no avoidance. Jungkook mentioned Busan, Jimin called the North Pole. Two different ideas, but it's the same spirit, the desire to continue sharing the journey together. And this is where everything becomes very simple. No need for theory. No need for assumptions. No need to exaggerate anything, because they themselves show the truth. In the quietest way. In the most honest way, they show that they are comfortable, that they support each other, that they enjoy being together, and that's probably what bothers some people the most, because something original does not need a defense. It is not necessary to shout. It does not need a long explanation. It feels. In small movements. In a brief glance. In comfortable silence, and after all that, there is one thing that often goes unnoticed. It's not about the places they visit. It's not about the activities they do, but about the atmosphere that always accompanies them. There is a calm between Jimin and Jungkook, not an awkward calm, but the calm that feels safe. They can sit without talking too much, they could look at each other without having to explain anything, and there is no pressure to fill the silence. This is the kind of silence that only arises when two people are completely comfortable with each other. In some moments, the camera even seems to be late, because their small interactions already occur before the camera is completely in focus, the smile that comes first, a small laugh that came out involuntarily, reflex movements of the hands. None of that is part of the script. It was a reflex, and reflexes cannot be trained for a long time. It only arises from a sense of security. There was also a moment when Jimin was seen guarding Jungkook, not in a big way, but in a very simple way. Ask him if he's okay, waiting for the move, adjust the rhythm of travel, and Jungkook responded the same way that he adjusted himself. To Jimin. He's watching, that he's responding. This is not a one-way dynamic, this is togetherness that meets each other in the middle, and because of this, all theories of compulsion feel increasingly fragile, because there is no compulsion in small things that are done over and over again, there is no compulsion in laughter that arises without prompting, there is no compulsion in silence that feels comfortable. There is no compulsion in touch that arises instinctively. These are all signs of security, and a sense of security is something that cannot be faked. When a person is in a place where he does not want to be, his body will rebel, his shoulders will tighten, his breathing will change, his movements will be controlled excessively, but Jungkook actually looks more relaxed, more open, increasingly becoming himself. That's honest body language, and body language can't lie. At this point, there's really nothing more to prove. Because the evidence is already present in every episode. In every little moment, all we have to do is look at it calmly, without prejudice, without forcing the story, and when we do that, one thing becomes very clear. Are you sure it's not about proof? It's not about defense. It's not about clarification. It's about togetherness, about feeling safe, about authenticity, and that's why, for many, this event feels so soothing. Because it's not noisy. He's not trying to convince anyone. It only shows two people who are comfortable in the same space, and sometimes, that's the truest truth. And when we look deeper, there is one other layer that also feels clear. It's not just about how they approach each other, but about how they give each other space. Jimin never pulled Jungkook by force. He never encouraged her to perform. He's just present, and Jungkook never looked depressed either. He chose. He approached because he wanted to, not because he has to. In some moments, Jungkook even looks like he is going home. His tone softened. It's slowing down, his expression is lighter. This is a sign of a person who feels in a safe place, and the sense of security is consistent, not just in one episode, not just in one scene. He is present when they are tired. He was present when they were silent. He was present when they just walked side by side. There is no pressure to be interesting, there is no need to show something, there is only togetherness. And this is where Are You Sure becomes different from a lot of other content. He's not trying to be dramatic. It's not a viral moment. Let the little moments speak for themselves. Short gaze, little smile, reflex movements of the hands, little things that are often taken for granted, but that is precisely what is most honest, because people can act out dialogue, but cannot act out the reflexes of the body for a long time, and every reflex Jungkook has when he's with Jimin feels the same, calm down, open, without distance. Jimin as well, the way he waited, the way he adjusted the pace, the way he pays attention to small details. This is the language of care that is not noisy, and the more we look at it, the more one thing becomes clear. There is nothing artificial here, nothing is forced. There are only two people who are comfortable walking side by side, share space, share time, and sometimes, that's more than enough to explain everything.